Mita Kosuke, Enamel Man, Rain, HPS, Shoshinsha, Ren. Now you might be asking, Billiam, why did you just name all these players? Well, first of all, these 6 players have at least a full combo on Yaminabe Master. But secondly, believe it or not, they also share something in common. It's the fact that they all play without sound effects. Now why is that? And should you keep your sound effects on or off? Let me explain. As everyone is aware, sound effects add an extra layer of sound on top of the music. They are helpful in letting you keep track of the rhythm, and sometimes they do sound very nice. But there are a couple of things you might not know about it. To dive deeper, you first need to understand your own playstyle. Not everyone is the same, but you can still ask yourself this question. Do you react better through visuals or through listening? If you are someone who plays with sound effects, chances are you are more of a visual player and play at a pretty high speed, perhaps over 11. I personally believe that anything past 11 might be a little too fast for you. Recall those 6 players I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Believe it or not, on average, they all play within the range of 10 to 11, and typically also offset their timing by at least -2. Try this. Turn your volume all the way down, and try playing a chart. If your accuracy didn't take a considerable hit, then you most likely are a visual player. As I mentioned earlier, not everyone is the same, so this won't necessarily apply to everyone, but ideally, you would want to strike a good balance between reacting with your eyes and reacting with your ears. Having sound effects off give you the control you need to balance it out. Now why is that? Let's start with a more technical explanation. No matter how small it is, all devices succumb to a phenomenon known as audio latency. Audio latency, or audio lag, is the time it takes for a sound to play after being given a certain action. For example, in FPS games, when you click your mouse, you expect a gunshot, right? Now the time it takes for the gunshot to sound is the audio latency. With higher audio latency, you will hear the gunshot some milliseconds after the shot has been taken. But that said, do you ever find yourself tapping just a tad bit earlier than the music? What is happening here is that instead of aligning your own taps, you are aligning the sound effects to the music, which inherently has just that slight bit of imperceivable audio latency. But you know what everyone has that has basically 0 audio latency? You have 10 of them. And those are your fingers. Yeah. This might not make sense now, but try this. Play a chart, but instead of playing it like you usually do, I want you to try tapping to the music. Ignore the sound effects. Ignore getting perfects. Just listen to the music, feel it, and tap to it. What is the end result? Chances are, if you did what I said, your accuracy might have completely plummeted. You will see a lot of light grades. You probably noticed that although you tap to the music, the notes actually came earlier. Now to combat this, players will typically bring their offset backwards. But once you get past a certain threshold, the sound effects start to desync with the music. And that is one reason why players often turn their sound effects off, because it gives them much tighter control over the song. Now let's consider another case as to why you should have them off. Even if you don't really consider the audio latency that big of an issue, you might still want to think about potential distractions. I'll start by categorizing 2 different types of sound effects, natural and artificial. Natural sound effects are sounds that are created as a result of something happening, and artificial sound effects are sounds that are generated to mimic the result of something happening. For example, imagine you are typing on a keyboard. For every key you press, you hear a sound from your keyboard, right? Those are your natural sound effects. Now, imagine that your computer plays a sound for every key you press on your keyboard. Now those are your artificial sound effects. In this scenario, you are left to deal with not only the sound of your actual keyboard, but also the sound the computer makes when you try to type. In other words, you are listening for both natural and artificial sound. Now depending on the person, some might find this a little distracting to have to receive 2 different types of input at the same time, and I find myself to be one of those people. Now back to Sekai. Maybe that wasn't the best example, but it's kind of the same idea. By turning on sound effects, you end up processing sounds from 3 different sources. You have the taps you are making, then the various sound effects that come with each tap, such as perfects, gold notes, grates, and flicks, and lastly, the music that you're trying to sync everything with. By turning off sound effects, you release a bit of that burden, allowing yourself to concentrate on and enjoy the music. Imagine Leonid is having a practice session. Now, Saki rushes on the keyboard. What should she do? Well, first off, she might want to note that down on the sheet music, but the main point is, she would need to listen to another member, Honami, for example, and make adjustments so that they're both in rhythm. This is kind of the same idea you want to have here. Eventually, everyone will be in sync with each other much more naturally, and through more practice, both you and Leonid will keep on improving. Anyway, as I was saying, being able to turn off sound effects allows you to concentrate on the music, and by doing that, you are able to listen for music cues, which in turn helps you to feel the music much more naturally. Take trills for example. I find it a lot easier to keep myself in beat during trills because I am able to hear the beats of the music. And if I do sway out of rhythm, I can always find my way back. Intense voice is another example. Now, how does the song go? 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1. You can kind of apply a similar idea here, where you can count in your head how it goes, and then get to a point where you can just follow it instinctively. This especially applies to songs where either the tempo changes or the chart itself slows down or speeds up. And songs that have complicated rhythms or gimmicks. With all that said, what are some situations in which you want to have the sound effects on? Let's start with the obvious. If you like sound effects, you can keep them on. Remember that there is always a slider for sound effects, so you can change how intense the sound effects are. You just want to make sure that you can concentrate on the music as to not let the sound effects overpower what you hear. Another situation is where you literally cannot hear your taps at all. For example, if you play with thumbs, or are in a loud environment, loud, or play with wired earbuds or headphones. Because you literally cannot hear your tapping, you will need those sound effects to act in place of them. People may usually bring a set of earbuds with them to arcades when they play games like Tunism. If you are a casual player, well, this isn't that big of a deal actually, but if you want to give it a shot, well, more power to you. Remember, whether you want to have your sound effects on or off, it all comes down to personal preference at the end of the day. Do you prefer to play with sound effects on or off? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you learned something today, do like and subscribe. Stay tuned for part 2 as I go over how to set note speed and offsets. Until next time.